All right. So as part of just trying to figure out what's happening with everyone in the world, I've decided to interview people around the world, um, people from all different walks of life, and just find out how COVID is affecting them, whether it's affecting them personally, professionally, spiritually. And so today we're talking with Dave from Malta.
Hello.
And Dave, I want you to introduce yourself in terms of what you've been up to since the last time I saw you. It's been a few years. So,
Oh, wow. Well, since the last time I saw you, lots of things have happened. Um, I'm teaching. I teach drama at Helena Grady Drama Academy in Malta. I'm the vice principal there, and we have got lessons and classes all over the island. It's development. We use development to teach children a whole range of skills, everything from voice and building their confidence. But we use drama as the medium. So it's not technically trying to teach children to become actors, but actually to use the medium of drama and game and play and voice to find their inner voice and to find confidence. So a lot of the kids we work with are really challenged. They may have Asperger's or ADHD or other things. Not all of them, but quite a lot have. So I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and then COVID hit us. We
oh
were
goodness.
just getting ready for our final term of the scholastic year, and normally in the final term we work towards productions to show parents how much the kids have achieved in all the different classes. And then we were left with this whole situation. Is like, well, what are we going to do? And we decided to go online. We went online with Facebook first, then we went on with Skype, then we went on with Zoom. Now we've subscribed to Zoom, and it's been a lot of relief for the children actually to see a familiar face and to have us jumping around and being crazy for an hour, and it's good relief for them, and for me as well. In when we first suggested that we were going to go online with everything, I was like, oh no, because I mean, I'm not photogenic. I hate my photograph
That's not
taken.
true. You're very
No,
photogenic.
I'm not. Look on Facebook. There's the odd few, but even though I act and I love theatre and directing and things, I'm actually quite reserved myself.
I think
You get to the.
that is the artist's conflict. The inner conflict
It
is
is.
sort of wanting to be seen and wanting to hide at the same time. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm more of the hiding mode. So when you're on camera and they can see everything you're doing and it's how you present, and I've been doing that from the headquarters, which is around the corner from me, which is lucky, because there's lots of light there and the backgrounds are good, and I can go in the costume department as well and put wigs on and hats and glasses and all sorts of things, and it's working really, really well.
Yeah.
And it's actually therapy for me, because when it first hit, the whole virus thing, and um, I think the first week or two was disbelief, like this, yeah, it'll soon pass. It's happening in China. It's not gonna happen to us. That sort of mentality, be that wrong, right, or whatever. But I mean, it's you just don't think it's gonna hit the way it has hit. But
Mm.
Italy's round the corner from Malta, and lots of
Yes.
Italians live in Malta.
Hmm.
And Sicily, as well, you've been to Sicily with us,
Yes.
is only a hop, skip over the water, and you're there. And they were getting locked down, and they were having tremendous amount of cases. And then suddenly Malta got its first case about 6 weeks ago. And then suddenly they closed down all the schools. So everything just hit us really fast.
It was the same
Um,
here. Your first case then was early March,
Yeah.
right?
So we were a little bit behind other people, but as soon as we got one, I think it was within about a week, they'd shut us down. All the schools were shut down, and then the restaurants and everything public. You can't meet in groups of more than three.
Okay, so are
Uh,
you guys in a true lockdown where you're not actually allowed to go out except for essentials?
You can go out for essentials and for exercise. That's pretty much it.
Hmm.
Or if you've got a job where you need to get to the job, you can do.
Right.
Um, but I mean, in some ways, it's super quiet when you do go out. I mean, we've been going out and having walks every day, which we didn't do before, so that's something positive.
Well, I
Um,
remember being in Malta with you, and even just to walk because of the cars and the traffic was challenging in certain places.
exactly.
So, so now it's obviously changed. There's not a lot of cars out.
That's right. It's very quiet on the roads. You can go down to the beaches and things, and they are relatively quiet. There's still
Mm.
people there, still people walking and exercising. In fact, I've never seen so many people exercising. I mean, they'll they'll just pull up and start, doing a full gym, and there's an aerobics teacher there with one other person at distance, and you're seeing all these people still going for it, and you think, well,
That's
that's
great.
that's good in a way, and people are, um, valuing what bit of freedom they do have.
And are they wearing
Uh,
masks while they're doing this? Or they, nope.
no, no. The only place I've seen masks in Malta is in one supermarket.
Mm.
Um, and it's only in one supermarket. I think this is really, really interesting because the psyche of humans
Uh-huh.
is we go to about 3 different supermarkets. And one, they spray your hands as you go in, and everybody's chatty, and you go and you take your trolley round and you do everything as normal. And you'd think, other than having your hands sprayed, everything is fine. The other one you go to, and they were allowing 2 people in, 2 people out. So there would be no more than 10 people. And that seems to have lapsed a bit now. So there's about 20 people in the supermarket. And again, they're just like, meh, and not even hand sanitized. And then the other one, you've got to sanitize your trolley. You've got to be split up. You can't go in pairs. And everybody's got masks on. So there seems to be, people follow other people, which is really interesting.
It's
It's a
definitely a
great time to,
variation, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
to people watch now is really interesting, because
Yes.
you find these people who are, and this is not a criticism. I mean, people will respond in different ways, and if they see other people with masks, they get masks. They're even selling the plastic masks that come over in that supermarket.
Oh, the
So I'm
shield, like
yeah,
a, uh-huh.
so I'm expecting next week there'll be shields, then full body armor, and the other ones are getting more liberal and more risque in their approach. So people just follow suit. But relatively, we've been very lucky in Malta. There's only been 3 deaths, 3
Mm.
fatalities, with underlying issues, which is at least some relief. Um, but there's still a sense of panic, especially amongst the older generation here, which is understandable because they're being given lots of information about, staying inside, and they're vulnerable. But we had, I think it was yesterday, there was a recovery, and I think that made a difference. There was a recovery by a 88 or 92-year-old
Wow.
person, and I think Malta was like, yes, we're all right now. So I'm expecting all the old people will be jogging and running around again.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think it's not just the idea of this little virus affecting us physically, it's mentally. And what you say about seeing people exercise, and that's actually good mentally. Like I feel Andrew and I in Vancouver, we've been able to get outside. There's no restrictions on that. So we took a bike ride on Saturday, spent 2 hours on the seawall, and it was packed. I know everyone was distanced from each other, not many people wearing masks at all, having picnics or exercising, and in a way that's good because it's good for your mental health, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. How about what you think this is doing for the society on a different level? Do you have any thoughts about that? Because I know you have a spiritual background. So
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's there's no escaping it. For me personally, I think it's a very, very scary and very tragic event that is going on. And it, I mean, it's showing resilience of human beings. I mean, people are coping as much as they can with things, and we are being given, it's true, we are being given loads of information about what to do, what not to do, and every country is different. And some people are saying lockdown is going to be for until the end. On the UK news, it's saying till the end of the year. Malta said they might not open till next year. And there's all this panic and sort of chaos. And I think it's the fear more than anything else. People are, if the media portrays fear as much as it is doing, and they may feel justified for doing that, it can have a two-way effect on people. And I think at the moment we're not seeing so much. I mean, we're just being given the information. It's more the information and the fear thing. We're not really given this the good news stories from it. I mean, I felt elated. I think the best I've started switching off from watching a lot of the mainstream media. I will watch more open, like Euronews and things like that, Al Jazeera and some other news networks who are a little bit more open. But they also show stories. And I remember the story of all the Italians coming out and playing music. And it touched my soul. I was absolutely, I thought, yes, this is what life is about. Here are people, and then they were it was a beautiful thing. They had glasses on the end of big poles, and they were chinking and cheering one another.
Amazing! I missed that.
Across balconies, they were chunking glasses, clunking them together, and doing
beautiful.
cheers. And I thought, that is the human spirit. Now, if you actually showed more of that, then people would approach this very different. The fear goes when you see human beings being resilient and showing love and care to other people, then people follow suit. It's going back to that thing I mentioned about masks. If people see masks, they'll follow other people. Majority of people in the world, I think, are sheep. They have a sheep mentality, not in a negative way, but they do. Human beings were a group. And again, if they used this situation to show the positives more than the negatives, then people would come out of this as more loving. When we eventually do come out of this, people right now would start to change their thinking, and I think people are. People would go, well, actually, I do care about the elderly. I care about the people who are really isolated on their own. I care about those people in other countries who are being more affected than us. I mean, when we were seeing Italy, every day I was like, oh my words, Italy's getting absolutely hammered. But I'm glad I did see those other stories of that resilience. And I remember another story as well on the streets. They interviewed an old man outside a pharmacy who'd been there for a long time. And he was outside, and they interviewed him and they said, well, what does it mean to you? And he started to cry. And he just said, I've had my life, but I care about the people who haven't. And I thought, you can learn a lot from people like that. So I'm trying to stay as positive, personally, as I can. I hope that mankind come out of this, humankind, for want of a better word. It's not all just men, is it? But I hope that humankind come out of this and realize what is important. And I think my biggest hope from this is that governments, this is where I put my political, because it's annoyed me a lot. And it has annoyed me for years, before COVID and everything else, to see the frivolous nature of politicians and governments spending money on things that only matter to them. That they don't really represent the people they're supposed to represent. And I'm still waiting for governments to do what's right. It always seems to be political ramblings between one country and another country, blame them, blame these. But where's their humanity? If you can see people on the street going and giving their last meal to another person, or they're helping somebody in need, that shows more of a human spirit than any of the politicians and what they're doing.
Agreed.
And that's what I would love to see come out of this, and that's what I hope that I don't think it will. I'd love to be positive, but I think the normal people will be the ones who change through this. They will be resilient. They will come out of it stronger in a way, and they will care more about the global community and the people that it affects. But the people we need it to really shake up are the movers and shakers, the big corporations, the politicians and the others who have the wealth. They have the wealth and they can make a difference. They can really make a difference, not just by giving out money, but actually where's the message? Where's the message? The messages on the media need to change. I don't know what it's like in Canada. I'd like to know. Are they showing the good news as well as the seriousness of things, the balance? I don't think journalism is balanced in the UK or in Malta.
I don't think it's balanced anywhere because I think we live in an age where everything is internet based. So we're grabbing our news from different sources, and it depends on, I think, partly on the algorithms of what you see. But I do think we have a good prime minister who cares about, helping the people. He's done several initiatives, announcing different initiatives almost every day. Today was an initiative for students who are going to be affected because they may not have summer jobs to get experience for whenever they graduate. They may be graduating without, so that it's going to be tough on so many levels. I think we do have a good prime minister in that sense. How about Malta? How is the government handling? What are they doing to help people?
Are we being monitored? Malta, most people, I shouldn't get shot for this, but Malta is a mafia state. It's controlled very heavily by corporations and business and an elite. They're known as a mafia state. They call even the opposition parties, whoever's in opposition, will call the others mafia and criminals and the rest. And we've had journalists murdered, and we've had other things happen, and we've got into the news for all the wrong reasons. And sadly, I don't have a good report to bring back about Malta. We get an update every day at 12:30, just after noon. And they are giving some money to people who are affected by it. So employed people have got access to, I think it's €800 a month or something like that. I don't know exactly the figures. I know my personal work where we can't access that. I don't think it's very easy to access the support. Also, when this came out, I think one of the senior ministers immediately went onto the news and said, "We're going to deport everybody who's not a Maltese national."
Wow.
And they also sent out letters to all the children of immigrants and told the children to go home. Made a lot of mistakes that are quite racist. Also, while this is going on, sadly, the migrant situation, which is very bad in Malta, because we're very close to Libya.
Yeah.
And almost every few days, there's a boat come from Libya with migrants trying to escape war. Sadly, the Maltese politicians leave them to die and to starve. Last week, 5 of them died. And it was a commercial trawler that picked up the people from the boat. I think there was about 80 people in total, children as well. And they took them back to Libya, and 5 of them were dead. And it took them 72 hours of leaving them stranded on a dinghy the week before that, another group of migrants. So, and then the migrants that are here, that they have allowed in the country, they are all in prefabricated containers in a walled compound with barbed wire all around it. And they only let the migrants out to work on the building sites in Malta. And this is not hearsay, this is well known for local people. You could go there and you can see the military guarding the entrance to this migrant camp. They let them come out and build their buildings for €50 a day. Then they're allowed to go back in. But at the moment, they're in lockdown because there are a number of COVID cases. So it's even worse for them. I can't imagine how
Yeah.
bad they're
So
finding this.
that's how they've been treated before all of this hit, and now they're in lockdown. Yeah, I feel the same way because
Exactly.
you see the stories of refugee camps around the world, and it just takes a case getting in there, and all of a sudden they don't have the same access to food, to hygiene, to all the things that we take for granted in certain
Yeah,
countries.
yeah. So I've not, in the past 6 weeks, I've been keeping track of the news in Malta almost on a daily basis just to get the updates. And my boss and everyone else all are Maltese, so they keep me updated. But there doesn't seem to be an initiative on that level. I mean, it's nice to hear that your Prime Minister is being proactive and actually cares about people and is doing initiatives for each tier of society, whoever they are, students or otherwise. And sadly, in Malta, that's not the case. They are not really looking at it as a community as a whole and what they can do positively. It seems to be, oh well, we'll react when the other party will kick off a little bit about things. We'll give some money to the economy. And don't forget, Malta is one of the richest economies and one of the most successful economies in Europe. It's
Yeah.
got the biggest GDP in the whole of Europe. So
Wow.
it has money. It's a tax haven for nearly all the global gaming companies. It has over 170,000 companies registered on this little rock. It's only a
Mm-hmm.
small rock. So
Mm-hmm.
it has all this wealth, but it's not really doing anything. People are pushing to try and get rent relief, and they were talking yesterday. The Nationalist Party was trying to push to have the water and utilities and electricity all cut by half to help people. But again, they push for that, and they know that most of the people who are foreign in this country rent off the landlords. Then it's up to the landlord if they're going to pass on that saving,
Right.
but it hasn't happened yet. So
Okay.
again, I can't imagine. I mean, I teach in a migrant hub, and I was teaching there to 23 different nationalities, and those kids, beautiful, beautiful children, from all walks of life, all different nationalities, and their parents were working in the hospitality sector on €800 a month, and they had to pay for the rent. They were often in cramped conditions. I can't imagine what they're facing right now, because they won't be getting any support financially. Everything is closed. They can't go back to their own country, and they've got children, and they came here for a better life. So they must be really finding the hardship. But again, it will never reach the news because nobody wants that negative news. They don't want to think about it here. Even though we're only a population of 400,000, they don't want to see that, because the first thing the Maltese, not all Maltese, but a lot of Maltese say is, go back to your own country. And
Hmm.
I used
How
to
has
have
that
that.
affected you? Because you're from the
I know.
UK.
I know. If anybody said that to me now, I'd say, well, if you can get a plane, I would gladly try and fly back. But it's not possible. We can't go back to our own country.
Mm.
Um, they took deportation off the table. They apologized for saying that, but
Well, that's good. They apologized and
they
realized. How long did it
apologized.
take them to realize that?
Um, well, the minister in question got bombarded on Facebook.
Oh, there
So
you go.
hooray for social media. It did
There
work.
is, there are things that are good about social media.
Absolutely. So the pressure went on then, but no, I mean, I'm glad that in a way that I'm in Malta at the moment, because we aren't as negatively affected as the UK. I speak to my family over there. Luckily, thank God, they're all safe.
Hmm.
and well. But I know friends and friends of family, and I know some people who've lost loved ones, and they're really having a tough time in the UK, and it could be the worst hit place in Europe. Um, and again, a message to the UK government and other people is show the positive, care about the people, see the people, not the figures. Stop looking at figures and counting.
Yeah, there is something to be said for that because we keep looking at the numbers, which doesn't relate to the people, and we
No,
get caught up in the numbers. But I think one of the things that I found wonderful about the government here is that they're actually have this open door sort of policy where they're listening to the people. They're actually listening to each other. The parties are working together, which is, I think, how government should work. Even though you have
absolutely.
opposition, this is where we're seeing the positive, and that's not necessarily the case in every country. We know of other countries where it's actually tearing them further apart. And this is one time where there's something this small, this invisible, which we all have to fight together, you know?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, globally, we are going to be affected economically, and that's the big hit that is going to come. I mean, we know we are going to be hit. Most countries are having to borrow huge amounts of money to get through this, and the global impact, we don't know yet how bad it's going to be, but there's going to be mass unemployment. There's going to be have to be a shift towards online activity, and we
Mm-hmm.
we all, we all seem to be moving to that anyway. But this has been like a super, let's go from first gear into fifth gear and go fast, because it's by necessity that we've had to do that. um, but I just hope people don't lose touch. I think for me, technology is great, but aside from that, you can't take away the human factor, the human touch. If I could give my kids a hug, and I finished teaching only 45 minutes ago, I miss them so much. I see them
Mm-hmm.
on screen, and we're all giving virtual hugs and kisses and all this, and that's wonderful, but it doesn't, and I'm not a
It doesn't
huggy to,
replace, yeah,
no,
it
it
doesn't
doesn't.
replace. And that's true because I think we are very lucky that we live in a time whereas 100 years ago, they couldn't have had this kind of, this luxury of social media, of being able to connect like I am to you today.
Yeah, it's
But at the
true.
same time, and so we have to be grateful for that, but at the same time, um, the new normal can't be that we are afraid to hug, right? So we're going to have to get past this in a mental capacity as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's true. It's true.
yeah.
So interesting times we live in, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think I just keep focusing on some of the positive news stories, and the people who are rising above this. And they're the champions for me personally. I think the people who are on the front line, the people who are rising above this horrific situation, um, and staying positive and staying focused, are the real champions of the world. Really, they're the ones who are doing it. It's great to. I'm not taking away anything from any politicians who are actively working, their butts off, trying to figure out ways of keeping the economic sector up, or this particular sector, or getting PPE equipment to people and so on. But at the end of the day, it's you still got to show the human touch.
There's a
And
long overdue, I think, appreciation that's being shown for the frontline workers. The essential workers, for so long have worked for so little in some cases, right? One of the good things to come out of this was in our neck of the woods, hospital workers have to pay for their own parking, and it's quite exorbitant. It's quite expensive. And during this, they've stopped charging them finally. But I believe one of the changes that could come from this is that, okay, this is a lesson learned. We should never have charged them in the first place,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
So here's where we can kind of go, okay, what have we been trying to do? We've been barreling towards making more money, right? This consumerism, capitalism sort of approach to things to keep getting ahead. But where does that lead us? Where does it leave us in terms of humanity? And I think this, for me, this virus has highlighted so many ways that we can change and so many differences around the world of how different societies are adapting, right?
But the first few weeks, I personally found it quite tough. I don't know why. I think it was more psychological than anything, because it wasn't that the fridge was emptier or that we didn't have the food or we didn't have a roof over our heads. It wasn't anything as extreme as that. But I think it was psychologically draining and challenging. And as I said, first the disbelief, and then the, oh, this is like a bad dream. I'm not gonna wake up from this. This is just insane. And somehow you have to find yourself in all that. And I've seen myself, it's almost like a little dial that keeps going from feeling pretty low and depressed to, when I have a class with children, it elates me. And then I could be down here again, feeling a bit blue, especially if it depends on how much I've been reading things on the media, which I don't do now. I gauge what I'm allowed to have. It's like I'm allowed 3 coffees a day. I know if I go over that, I can be a bit hyper. And if I'm under that, I'm a bit low. So I know now with how much media I should have, but you find it is self-discovery in a lot of ways. And you find yourself and you ask those questions, what is important? What is really important? Is a job, is a career so important? Well, no, not to me. It's not. And money isn't that important. It's easy for me to say that because, as I said, I've got food in the kitchen, and I don't know if I'll have a job next week. We don't know where things are going. But at the end of the day, it's not got the value. I mean, I've been around the world, and you've been around the world a lot. And when you see other people and other civilizations and people living more simpler lives, that's what matters. The connection with human beings is much more important. The connection with the earth and the animals and everything is as important as well. So there's all these things that are super important. And I just hope that people will find that. And I know from some other people I know on Facebook that they've found it. They've gone through the difficult bit, and then you become accustomed to it. I think people, human beings are amazing that they can adapt, and they're like, okay, I've not been out to the pub, and I've not been out to a restaurant, and I've not been able to do this, but actually I've taken a course and I'm doing this. I'm bettering myself here, or I'm doing meditation, or I'm doing yoga, or whatever they're doing. And people are finding things, and so not something you would ever capture me ever saying before now, but actually the internet is a real godsend, because it really is connecting people. You can find out what the truth is. You can find the good news stories. You can find things to better yourself. You can meditate. You can I watch 4K videos of all sorts of weird and wonderful things that I never thought I'd do. I've started growing vegetables at home. We've got plants everywhere. We got some plastic and some bamboo sticks, and we made a makeshift greenhouse in the yard. And
Andrew took an old bookshelf and made a planter out of it.
Fantastic.
It's what you can do. It's the idea of how we used to live, I think, that we don't necessarily need to go out and buy things that are dedicated, like our grandparents or even our parents. I mean, so many things that they would reuse and repurpose. And it makes you feel good to not have to throw anything out, right? And I'm married to a guy who absolutely doesn't throw anything out. He sees a little screw on the road and he picks it up, puts it in his pocket, and he thinks, I have a use for this later. I don't know what it is, but that turns out to be good. What you said earlier, though, I wanted to comment on the idea that, going back and forth between, maybe being a little depressed to being elated. And I think part of it comes down to the interactions we have, because we
Mm.
are missing the social interaction. So if we're able to have continuous social interaction, even like this, I know that this will probably boost both of us today, because we've not talked to
Absolutely.
each other in a long time, right? And also just to have that conversation outside of your significant other, right? Like the other day, we were walking down the street, and across the street was a girl I know from yoga and her partner. And so we were talking from across the street, and we had this conversation that normally wouldn't last more than 5 minutes. But because of the situation, we stood there and talked from across the street for, I think, 20 minutes. And it just, I think all four of us felt better for it. So it's kind of finding the balance. I think in some ways, um, there has been an imbalance maybe in just running on the wheel and maybe doing too much social interaction and maybe not enough solitude. So now we're trying to find the balance between all of that. And for me, it actually feels really good, because I've been sort of heading that way anyways. Like I've been sort of heading towards, I mean, I've been baking bread anyways. I've been doing 2 loaves a week regularly. So for me, there's certain things that just came naturally, but then adding in the vegetables, we've done that before, but this year we took it seriously. And getting back to the basics, to me, it's like a reset. I use
Mm.
that term, it's a reset, because it is, to me, like a return to that innocence of childhood where everything is available to you and we can see, we don't have blinders on. You can see what's out there, and we can actually see what we can do, instead of being focused on just certain aspects of our lives. So whether that is going for more walks, or whether that is planting, or whether it is baking, or whether that is meditating, yoga, all these things we talked about, but there's a world of opportunity for us. And in a sense, this is giving us the time to slow down. And in a sense, time doesn't exist right now. We have
Mm.
space, but we don't have time. So we have all this space within our heads, if we like, around us, while we're isolated, to stretch out into that space. That's been my
Absolutely.
experience.
It's
Yeah.
very true. And I love the idea of us on this little running wheel, because it is true. I mean, I just go back, because I know we first met in New Zealand, or was
Oh,
it
you know
Australia?
what? It was
No, it was
China.
China.
It
China
was China.
then, yeah. Okay. But I remember on those travels, for me, it was a real epiphany as I was going around, because a lot of the time I was on my own, and I had a little notebook. And I remember writing these wonderful things down that are coming to mind through COVID again, where when you're in solitude, when you're on your own, and when you actually start to look at yourself in the mirror and who you are, and sometimes it's not a nice thing to look at, and you go, why did I pick up this baggage? Why, you know? And when you look at what is important and what I had wrote in that notebook, I'm going back to it again, to the
Mm.
reset button, which is what matters to me. And having a basic life, just not having too much, not suffering with too little, but actually valuing the things that we have and using quality. But again, I see myself on that wheel. That when you said that, I was like, yeah, I was. Every weekend we would go and see friends. We'd go to the restaurant, and you lose the quality and the value of things, because you just go on to this little running wheel again, and you're not really thinking about, you know, what has got real value. So I hope the resets really stays with us, and that we can take things away. I mean, I said when I came back with my notebook from New Zealand that that's it. I'm never going to change. All I had in the world was on my back in a rucksack. I didn't have a house, didn't have a job, and those things. Everything I had was one pair of jeans, one pair of Crocs that went down the river because I swam in them and I lost them part way through. A lot of people were thankful for that I was wearing
I
Crocs in
don't know if I saw
Australia.
your Crocs. Had you lost them by China?
I can't. No, I lost them in either Australia or New Zealand. So they
Okay.
did last. They lasted the journey. But no, I hope we all just reset and see what's important. And I really hope and pray and everything for and have the best feelings for everybody, especially those movers and shapers, those people with such wealth, the Bill Gates of this world and other people who are so up here with all that finance and all that, what they see possibly as power. And it means very little. When you look at what matters in the world, it means so
Mhm.
little, but it can do so much. They need to redistribute that. They really do. And we need to get back to enjoying life and allowing people to enjoy life, not to be on the mill. We shouldn't be putting people on the mill of having to work 5 days a week, 2 days off. I mean, I've thought that for a while. We work people into the ground. We work people in the world. Some
Mhm.
countries more than others. I mean, it was an interesting thing on the news, and Trump drives me insane as he does many people. Sorry, America, but I sympathize. But Trump's going off on a tangent and saying that China, and we should do sanctions against them, and then he takes a step back the next day and says we can't do that because China provides all the cheap labor and all the cheap products for the world.
Right.
But it's practical slavery. These poor people, and you've been to China as well,
Yes.
these people have very, very little. Same in India and many other places in the world. And that needs to be addressed. Before COVID-19 came out, I'm sure you had on the news as well, everything was about global warming again. It was about the plastics we're using, that we're destroying the earth, we're killing off wildlife across the
Mhm.
board, year in, year out. That hasn't gone away.
Right.
Okay, they've had a little bit of a breather for a few weeks, but we need to change. We do need to change, and we do need to reset. This is not just us, but I mean, all of humanity needs to change. And my message is to those people who are the movers and shapers, the people with power, please, please get a conscience. Get a
Mhm.
conscience about the world, get a conscience about the people that are in it, and be thankful for what you have. And don't have more than you need, because you do not need trillions and
Yes.
billions. They do not need that.
Well,
And
it's the
it's got
familiar
to stop.
phrase. Yeah.
It's
When
got to
is
stop.
enough enough? That's the thing. And the idea of being on the wheel, being captive by activity, but also being captive by things. It's liberating, isn't it, when you can let go of material things
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you don't actually need them. They
yeah.
don't actually improve your life, right?
That's true. That's true. I mean, I love stories. You know me and stories. I start talking about stories. But not long before the COVID-19 situation, I used to drive to the south of the island in Malta to one of the colleges there to work with all boys, which I still do. And well, I don't drive there, but I do it online.
Mm.
And when you go down to the south of the island, I think you actually went there down to the three cities. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was the last night. And there's the big marina with the millionaire's paradise of
Oh, I
yachts.
remember. It was beautiful, but
Huge.
it was crazy, the
Yeah,
difference. Yeah.
absolutely amazing yacht. I mean, I love yachts. I've never really been on a big one. I've been on a cruise ship, and that thing we had in China, that was
I don't know if that was
so.
a yacht.
I don't
That
know
was like
what
a
it was.
the Yangtze
It's
River cruise.
yeah, yeah. It was interesting to say the least. And but yeah, all these yachts down there, and just interestingly, just a few months ago, one of the Saudi Arabian, the Minister for Education, had his yacht dock. And I see these yachts because I drive past them, and you can see them. And this huge yacht came in to the dockyards there to get refitted, and I thought, "Ooh, wow, that's a beauty." And I drove past it, and I thought I'll look up the name and see who's got it. And it was the Saudi Arabian education minister, and it's a 54-bedroom yacht, and it's the biggest yacht that was built at the time. About 6 years ago, I think he built it, and he's been on it twice in that time since it was built. And now he's building a bigger one. And I know somebody from the shipyard, and they were telling me they do all the administration and the refits for all that. And she was telling me that yeah, he'd only been on it twice, and he was getting another one because somebody else had a bigger one. So instead of having a 54-bedroomed yacht, which was huge, that cost millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, he's building another one to be bigger than the next person, so he can't go on it. And you're just thinking, what is the insanity behind that? And they have these programs on TV which I will never endorse. They flick on and I'd switch off. But where you've got, what do billionaires spend their money on? And they've got diamond encrusted Bentleys and things like that, and you go in.
And the thing
Come on.
is that these are all different worlds, and everything becomes relative, right? So we live in a society here where somebody else might think, well, what do they, if you could compare how life might be, say, with these Saudi millionaires versus people living in Hollywood versus people living in Toronto versus just people living in a small town, and everything becomes a hierarchy of things. And I suppose once you're in that pool, you start to drink the Kool-Aid, right? You don't even realize the difference, and you no longer can connect to what it is to be in a small town,
Absolutely. And that whole wheel thing, I see again, it's wheels within wheels. And I do feel for people like that with those yachts and everything else, who are trapped in that circle, that they feel they have to do that. That somehow they don't think, I mean, it's easy for us looking outside in and going, oh, I would never spend 150 million on a yacht that I'm only going to go on twice. And why do I need 54 bedrooms? I mean, I'm lucky if I get any fun or activities in one, but I mean, sleeping wise, and reading, of course. But I mean, why do you need 54?
But then somebody could look at us and think,
yeah,
well, why do you need 2 bedrooms?
exactly.
Right?
So it is wheels within wheels. But somewhere we must meet the middle ground. Humanity across the board, from the poorest in the third world countries all the way through to the richest in the West.
I think in some ways sorry.
There has to be a line where what makes you human, what makes you a cohabiter of this planet, and that's what connects us. And we should look at what connects us rather than disconnects us more than anything else.
Well, in some ways too, it's also the idea of hoarding. When people hoard, they're hoarding because they think there's going to be a lack of things, maybe, but they're also hoarding when it comes to wealth, right? So somebody goes out and buys 10 houses because they're trying to accumulate wealth. That's also a form of hoarding, and it leaves less for the other people, right?
It's true.
So there's something to be said for the idea of just needing to accumulate more and more. And is it because you're comparing yourself to somebody else? Because if you're just to look at yourself and what you actually need, then it's pretty simple, really. You need clean water, you need shelter, you need clothing, and you need food.
Yep,
right?
That's it.
And also, obviously, we now know we need human interaction. We need to be able to come together in communities. And I think that's another idea, is that communities are not businesses. So when you get into communities being run like businesses, you forget that it takes much more for community than just having money. You need to have the care workers. You need to have people taking care of different people. You need to have all kinds of things that make a society function as a functional society and not dysfunctional, right? And
Absolutely.
when you're running things like a business, you hear about cities that are on the verge of bankruptcy during this crisis. Well, how much have they leveraged themselves and treated themselves as a business as opposed to being governance of a community and keeping that community together? It's the almighty dollar, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
Yeah.
So how has it been for you? I mean, you've let me do lots of talking, but from point zero, from when it hit, how have you been
I
doing?
guess,
What sort of happened?
so I live in a place where there's a lot of Asian population. So when this thing started to become like kind of in the background, there was something happening in China, was I think for us January. Um, and I went to a Lunar New Year's event for the Vietnamese community. It was February 1st, Tet it's called. And it was, I invited my neighbor to go, and she said, you know, we're kind of staying away from crowds. So back then, people were staying away. There was a community here called Richmond, and it's full of, it's got a big, large Chinese population, and apparently it had become a ghost town. People were not going out to the restaurants, and they were wearing masks and all that. So they already had an inkling that it was coming. And that's how they were behaving here. And because the flights were still coming in, there was a high chance, right? When I went to the Tet event, it was more than half empty. And it was very unusual because it is their biggest event of the year. And the guy that was running this kind of told me, he said, yeah, he said, it's because everyone's afraid of this virus. So that's how it started to trickle into my being, I suppose. And so I started to pull back from larger crowds and things like that as the time went on. I think when it started to hit, I had this sense of just, well, I already work a lot from home. I do writing from home. Yes, I'm an actor, so the audition stopped, but I was quite at peace with not having to transition from what I do. And I took the time to, you know, go, okay, well, we can continue to do what we're doing. And I kind of set up a little schedule for myself to stay on track. I had a friend of mine who was writing something in Malaysia, sent me a poetry piece, and he said to me, can you write some music to this? And now I haven't composed music like really since I was a kid, and really ever, because I've never written it down. But he's interested in challenging, you know, me to do something that he thinks I can do, that I, you know, just to reach that. So I started to take that into my own, you know, psyche of what can I do that I haven't done before. But also on top of that, I was trying to look for ways to help. So I called all the old people I knew, a neighbor down the street who's lived here for over 50 years. You know, a lot of his old friends are gone, but I asked him if I could help, and he was fine. And I was reaching out on a regular basis to certain people that I knew might be affected by this. And he called me back, and he was so touched. He doesn't really know my name because he's older, and he knows me to see me. We always have conversations, but he did call me back because he'd saved the number, and he said, I just wanted to say how touched I was because in 50 years, nobody's called me in this neighborhood to see how I'm doing, right? To see when I needed help.
And have you, has it had any negative effects on you at all? Anything where has it pulled you down to earth at any point with things, or?
I think for sure. I think you have your days where you just feel drained. And I think I liken that to the days, or I attribute that to the days when I've spent too much time looking up the numbers. So I pulled back from that. I actually gave myself less time I pulled away from Facebook and I deactivate my account every now and again anyways. But I deactivated for an entire week and felt, oh, that's a relief. The first couple of days was like, oh, okay. But you get, like anything, we adapt, and we've become addicted to checking things that we don't need to check. The virtual world for me, I've always said I was born in the wrong era because the virtual world for me doesn't make a lot of sense. But I get that we can do this. I love that we can do this, but I want to live my life in the real world. And so, yeah, there has been times when I've been a little drained, and I think I relate it to that when I'm very sensitive to the negative cycles that can be on the internet. And even just the fact that you're looking at it, even if it's not negative, that still doesn't feel natural to me personally.
No.
You know?
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, we weren't, and you're younger than me, but we weren't
not
brought
by
up.
Much.
We weren't brought up with screens in front of us and having to. I mean, it does have a toll on you always looking at a screen and connecting online through that. It's great for some of the grey matter, but it can have a negative effect as well. And I was just interested to ask you that because for me, I wasn't working from home. I was very, very much hands-on. So for me, it was the challenge of actually, oh my words, I'm not teaching until the afternoon now, and I'm just blobbing around in my underpants, doing very little in the morning. And you have to find, even that becomes boring after a couple of days, and then you're like, I need to find something. I need to find something to give my life more value than it is, because otherwise you can get into that cycle. I've got a lot of the kids that I work with who are still in that cycle after 5 or 6 weeks, who are not getting up until 1 o'clock. They'll do the bits of tutoring, and you can see they're being hit with all this, and they've grown up in this media dominant and screen dominant and social media domains, and they're struggling to find things to do, and they want to connect. And in a way that gives me hope. I know it's sort of a bit horrible, but actually I think, well, yeah, if the younger generation can start to feel the way we've probably always felt
Mm-hmm.
about it, then there's hope for them. Because I know my niece was always had a tablet in front of her, was always and she was from 2 years old, she had a tablet, Peppa Pigging this and doing things, and wouldn't interact socially. So I'm hoping it might have that effect. We've not mentioned that, but I hope that that might happen.
I
And
think
that we,
that's valid. I think that's, I mean,
you
I think
know,
there's a trend, and there is the idea of, like you say, the transition for people going from, I mean, I've already done that transition because when I transitioned from dentistry to acting, I had to learn how to do that. One of the things that I did this time, what I picked up from was, because yes, I still had to transition from, like, I'm not going out for auditions, I'm not going out for meetings, all of that stopped. So I had to, I saw one of my girlfriends who's a mother, uh, had within our little group of friends had posted her chalkboard schedule of her kids, and it was chunks of time, and it reminded me of being in school. Like, the bell rings at 10 o'clock, you go to your next class. And so I started to put that into my day, because I could otherwise spend 8 hours doing my taxes and then be brain dead after it. So I just make myself do like 2 hours here, and then I have an hour for playing piano, and I have an hour for writing, and then I have a couple of hours for whatever I want to do. So it's not so structured. And I put in breaks, and I think that was one thing that helped the transition. But then the other thing that you mentioned is, yeah, I think one of the positive effects is to step away from your computer, right? Step away, and for this younger generation, that might be novel, but I am seeing kids in our neighborhood out in the streets, and I haven't seen too many of them since we've lived here for 5 years doing that too often. There's a couple next door that go outside. Their parents are quite good about, they go out and they play in the tree, they climb the trees, they play things, but I'm seeing more kids doing that, and that's, for me, heartening. Like, they're getting to
it is.
experience what we grew up with, which was a lot of independence. I think in some ways we didn't have a lot of parenting, and a lot of just creativity of being able to create our own amusements, right? Games, hopscotch, whatever we did.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I saw a hopscotch chalked out on the on the sidewalk the other day, and I actually played it. I thought,
Good,
yeah,
good on you.
this is great, right? So there are some good positives that can come out of this, and it is a reset, and it is an idea of, you know, what can we do if we don't have all of this privilege that we've been
Mm.
living with, right?
And I love that. And I think that's a really good thing to carry even beyond COVID-19, is this idea of reset. I'm certainly going to be using it in my lesson tomorrow and explaining some of this. But actually, just we've got the opportunity to reset whenever we want. We don't need COVID-19 next time. We can actually do this ourselves. And we just need to keep reminding one another, human beings are strange, because, it seems to me quite apparent that if you take away things that people didn't actually use in the first place, they want it. It's almost like a reverse psychology. So kids now who were all gamers, always in front of a screen for 10 hours a day, suddenly when you take away outside stimulus, because it's not there, they want it. and you know, we can hit that reset. And I think we need to be responsible. At the end of the day, we're not too old to just go, well, it's not my problem now. It's the kids, you know, it's this younger generation. You can't blame the younger generation. We've got to take responsibility, and our parents should take responsibility too of the world that we've created. And it isn't great. And it is full of wheels within wheels. Everybody seems to be spiraling in their own little worlds, disconnected. But this, in one way, we've all been brought under this umbrella of COVID-19. And we can use it as a positive to go, do you know what? In the future, I ain't going to buy as much as that anymore. I'm going to grow my own stuff. I want to collect rainwater and use my bath water to flush my toilet, which I'm doing at the moment. And I don't have to. It's not that I can't afford to pay the water, but it's making me think, well, I don't want to actually waste things. You know, I'm going to be like Andrew, picking up little screws on the sidewalk. And
Yes.
you know, and just in fact, me and Michelle went out on Sunday. We are allowed to go out, by the way, anybody in
Yes.
Malta. But we were going out on the hunt for pieces of wood and anything we could actually grow things in. So we found some old bits and pieces on derelict land. So we're off scrounging every weekend now to find bits and pieces to grow potatoes or beans
Now,
or
isn't that fun?
yeah, exactly. It's like being a kid again, you know.
Exactly.
And why not? And why not? We should do. Life is too short. Life is far too short, and we need to live each day, live each moment, and help one another. You know, and I think it's a great initiative you've got, trying to get you know, the viewpoints and ideas, and just connecting with people around the world, whoever you know, and just collating that and going, guys, we're in it together. We're in it together, and we're all the same. It doesn't matter where we're from. We are coping with it in different ways, but there's lots of things that are similar. A lot of us are finding ourselves. The mirror is really in front of us,
Yeah.
and you can't run away from the reflection. You have to go, well, am I going to stay in bed until 12, or am I just going to wallow and say I'm not going to have a job and be depressed? Or are you going to try and actually build some kind of life in this situation? And people have had far worse. You know, people are struggling far more, and have done in the past, and have always done, time memorial. You know, people are from war-torn countries and in hardship, and we mustn't forget that either. That hasn't gone away. A lot
This
of that
is
thing,
this
it's
is
still
interesting.
it's not on the news, but it's still there.
Still
Libya
there.
is still there. Saudi Arabia and the issues, and the Palestinian plight, everything is still there. The planet still needs saving. We need to stop
There's
doing
still
this.
natural disasters too happening too,
Exactly.
and we're
There's
not
loads
hearing about
happening.
them. And so it's the idea of balance, and you know, and as you mentioned, just going out in the world. When I had a very profound conversation with nuns. Actually, I was at a convent in Malaysia, and they used to run a refugee camp for the Vietnamese. And one of the things that she said to me, I actually coded back onto a post on Facebook, which is, I think we waste so much. When you go out into the world and you see what people have, and you see what little they have, we realize we waste even water, electricity, food, everything, right? This is the biggest sin she feels of humanity, is wastage. And I have to say, yeah, there is something to be said for how much we waste and don't take we don't appreciate what we have, and we take things for granted. So even the idea of people are missing going out for coffee, well, that's supposed to be a privilege and a treat. And when it becomes an everyday occurrence, it no longer has the specialness of it being a treat.
It's true.
Right? Anyways, thank you. This has been
No.
awesome.
And next time we shouldn't wait until COVID-19 to talk. It's been too long.
I agree. Thank you, Dave, for chatting with me all the way from Malta today.
My pleasure.
It's been wonderful to get here, and it's been so great to be back in touch with you, but just wonderful to get different perspectives on how this is affecting and what your viewpoints are on COVID. So thank you.
No, thank you. And stay safe, Love to you both and everybody out there and whoever watches this in the future. We will not be beat. We are stronger than that, and we just need to just keep loving and caring for one another. So keep in touch.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll drop you a line. Okay,
All right.
bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.